The morning mist clung to the village of the Fa family like a silken veil. For Mulan, the day began not with the rising sun, but with the frantic rhythm of preparation. Today was the day of the matchmaker. While other girls practiced their graceful walks and refined tea pouring, Mulan was memorizing proverbs written on her arm. She wanted to bring honor to her family, but the silk dress felt like a cage, and the white makeup felt like a mask. Inside the bustling town center, the air was thick with the scent of incense and the weight of expectation. Mulan stood before the stern matchmaker, a woman whose scowl could curdle milk. Disaster struck quickly. A stray cricket, a spilled cup of tea, and a misplaced fan turned the ceremony into a chaotic blur of fire and embarrassment. The matchmaker's voice rang out like a crack of thunder. "You may look like a bride, but you will never bring your family honor." Mulan walked home in silence, the colorful umbrellas of the village blurring into a smear of disappointment. In the family garden, she sat by the stone dragon, wiping the white paint from her face. She looked at her reflection in her polished sword. "Who is that girl I see, staring straight back at me?" she whispered. Her father, Fa Zhu, sat beside her. He didn't scold her. Instead, he pointed to a late-blooming magnolia. "The flower that blooms in adversity is the most rare and beautiful of all," he said gently. But even his kindness couldn't quiet the drums of war beginning to echo from the north. The drums grew louder. In the village square, a golden scroll was unfurled by the emperor's messenger. The Huns, led by the merciless Shan Yu, had breached the Great Wall. The decree was absolute. One man from every family must serve in the imperial army. When the name Fa Zhu was called, Mulan felt her heart drop. Her father was a war hero, but he was old, and a past injury left him leaning heavily on a cane. He stepped forward with his head held high, accepting the conscription papers. That night, the Fa household was silent. Mulan watched from the shadows as her father tried to practice with his old sword, his leg buckling under the weight. She knew the truth. If he went to war, he would not return. In the dark of the night, under a pouring rain that washed away her tears, Mulan made a choice. She entered the family temple and prayed to the ancestors. Then, taking her father's sword, she did the unthinkable. With one swift stroke, she cut her long black hair short. She donned her father's heavy armor, the cold metal biting into her shoulders. She took the conscription papers and led her horse, Khan, out of the stable. She wasn't just leaving home, she was committing high treason to save a life. As she rode into the storm, the great stone dragon in the garden remained still, but the spirits of the ancestors were already stirring. High above in the clouds, the ancestors were in an uproar. A woman joining the army? It was a scandal that could dishonor the family forever. They called upon the great stone dragon to wake and protect her, but the dragon remained cold stone. Instead, it was Mushu, a tiny red disgraced dragon who had been demoted to ringing the gong, who accidentally broke the statue. Desperate to regain his status as a guardian, Mushu decided to help Mulan himself. "I'm travel-sized for your convenience," he declared, joined by Kree, a supposedly lucky cricket. They caught up with Mulan just as she reached the gates of the training camp. Mulan was terrified. She was surrounded by thousands of men, all spitting, fighting, and smelling of sweat. Mushu whispered instructions in her ear, trying to help her act manly. It resulted in a disastrous brawl in the mess hall, leaving Mulan, now calling herself Ping, the most hated recruit in the camp. Captain Li Shang, the young and disciplined leader of the regiment, looked at the scrawny Ping with utter disdain. He saw no soldier in the clumsy boy before him. Mulan stood alone, her secret hidden behind a layer of dirt and a deepened voice, wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Training began at dawn. Captain Shang set a grueling pace, pushing the men to their limits. He fired an arrow into the top of a towering wooden pole and challenged the recruits to retrieve it. The catch? They had to climb with 2 heavy bronze weights tied to their wrists, one representing discipline, the other representing strength. Day after day, Mulan failed. She was beaten in hand-to-hand combat. She fell behind on the runs, and she couldn't even lift the weights. Shang eventually handed her the reins of her horse and told her to go home. But Mulan didn't leave. That night, she stood before the pole. She realized she couldn't reach the top using brute strength alone. She wrapped the weights around the pole, using them as leverage to pull herself up. As the sun rose, the camp woke to see Ping standing at the very top of the pole, throwing the arrow at Shang's feet. This was the turning point. Inspired by her resilience, the other soldiers, Yao, Ling, and Shan Po, began to improve alongside her. They transformed from a ragtag group of misfits into a cohesive unit. Mulan wasn't just keeping up, she was leading the way. But as they marched toward the front lines, the lightheartedness faded. They passed a village burned to ash, a grim reminder that the Huns were no longer a distant threat. They were here. The Imperial Army marched through the snowy peaks of the Tungshao Pass. The silence was eerie, broken only by the crunch of boots on ice. Suddenly, a flaming arrow streaked through the sky, hitting the supply wagon. The Huns appeared like shadows against the white snow, thousands of them, led by the towering Shan Yu. Shang's troops were outnumbered and outmatched. As the Huns began their final, thundering charge down the mountain, Shang ordered his men to prepare for their final stand. But Mulan saw something else. She noticed a massive, unstable overhang of snow above the Hun army. Ignoring orders, she grabbed the last rocket from Mushu's hands. She ran toward the enemy, aiming not at Shan Yu, but at the mountain peak. The rocket soared, exploding against the summit. A low rumble turned into a roar as a massive avalanche collapsed. The wall of white consumed the Hun army in seconds. In the chaos, Mulan saw Shang about to be swept away. She risked her life, riding Khan into the path of the snow to pull him to safety. The avalanche settled, leaving a graveyard of white. The Huns were gone, but Mulan felt a sharp pain in her side. As she collapsed, Shang knelt beside her, calling for a medic. The battle was won, but Mulan's greatest challenge was about to begin.
Ping!
Get a medic! Now!
Inside the medical tent, the truth could no longer be hidden. When the doctor emerged, he didn't speak. He simply stepped aside. Shang entered and saw Mulan, her side bandaged, her long hair spilling out. The shock was absolute. In the eyes of the law, her deception was punishable by death. Chi Fu, the emperor's advisor, screamed for her execution. Shang took Mulan's sword, the same sword she had stolen from her father. Mulan knelt in the snow, waiting for the blow. But Shang remembered how she had saved his life. He threw the sword into the snow. "A life for a life," he said coldly. "My debt is repaid." He ordered the army to move out, leaving Mulan behind in the freezing mountains with only Mushu, Kriki, and Khan. Mulan sat in the shadow of the peaks, feeling the weight of total failure. She hadn't brought honor, she had brought shame. Mushu tried to comfort her, confessing his own selfish motives for coming along. But as they prepared to head home, Mulan saw something move in the distance. From the snow of the avalanche, Shan Yu and a handful of his elite warriors emerged like ghosts. They were heading straight for the imperial city. Mulan realized the war wasn't over. She couldn't go home yet. She had to save the emperor. Mulan reached the imperial city during the victory celebration. The streets were filled with lanterns and cheering crowds, but no one would listen to her warnings. Ping was a hero, but Mulan was just a girl. As Shang's troop marched toward the palace, the Huns struck. They kidnapped the emperor, locking themselves inside the palace. Shang and his men tried to batter down the doors with a statue, but it was useless. Mulan stepped forward.
I have another way.
"I have a better way," she said. She convinced Yao, Ling, and Qian Po to use their wits. They disguised themselves as concubines, hiding their weapons under silk robes. Using their sashes, they scaled the palace pillars, slipping past the guards, who expected an army, not a group of women. Inside the balcony, a fierce battle erupted. While Shang fought Shan Yu, Mulan cut the emperor free. She stayed behind to face the Hun leader herself. She didn't use a sword, she used a fan. With a clever flick of her wrist, she disarmed Shan Yu and pinned his cape to the roof with his own blade. Mushu, riding a firework rocket, soared toward them. Mulan dove for safety as the rocket hit Shan Yu, carrying him into the Tower of Fireworks. The night sky exploded in a brilliant display of red and gold. The Huns were defeated. In the silence after the explosion, the emperor descended the palace steps. The entire city watched as he approached Mulan. Chifu began to list her crimes, but the emperor silenced him with a look. "I've heard a great deal about you, Fa Mulan," he said. "You stole your father's armor, ran away from home, and impersonated a soldier." He paused, then added, "You also saved us all." The emperor bowed to her. In an instant, the thousands of people in the plaza, including Captain Shang and the soldiers, bowed as well. He offered her a position on his council, but Mulan declined. She had been away from home long enough. The emperor gave her his own jade crest and the sword of Shan Yu. "So your family will know what you have done for China," he said. Mulan returned to her village, no longer afraid of her reflection. She found her father sitting in the garden. She knelt before him, presenting the sword and the crest. "Father, I've brought you these gifts," she whispered. Fa Zhu dropped the sword. He didn't look at the gold or the jade. He wrapped his arms around his daughter. "The greatest gift and honor is having you for a daughter," he said. Behind them, Mushu was reinstated as a guardian, and even the ancestors were celebrating. Mulan had found that she didn't need a mirror to see who she was. She only needed the courage to be herself. And as Shang arrived at the garden gate, ostensibly to return a helmet, it was clear that a new chapter of her life was just beginning.